thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to be taking a look at the ColorVu and Acusense cameras that's available from Hikvision. We're also going to cover some of the POC ColorVu as well. So what we'll do is we'll go through a few slides first, and then I've got some demos which I can do, and then we'll come back on to some more ColorVu range that we've got here as well. And right at the end, we'll have the Q&A section. So if you have any questions as we go through the webinar, if you put them into the Q&A section on Zoom with the webinar. So my name's Nathan Garner. I'm the project manager and one of the tech support team leaders here at Dynamic CCTV. We've been doing quite a few of these webinars now, and this was one that we felt like a lot of our customers would find useful, covering the ColorVu range and also the Acusense cameras, as there's new cameras now on the IP range that will combine both the ColorVu and Acusense technologies into a single camera. What we're going to do is take a look at the Acusense side of things. So with standard VCAs, such as your line crossing and intrusion detection, can get multiple false alarms triggered through, either by spiders crossing the lens or bushes in the camera image moving across the line or in the intrusion zone. You can also have animals triggering the events, which isn't really useful if relying on these events for alarm configurations through the Connect mobile app, for example, or email notifications. Especially if you use the likes of the standard motion detection, you will get a lot of false alarms that come through that are generated from the system, just as a limitation of the technology. With standard VCA rules, you don't have the ability to configure the actual VCA events to be triggered by specific things. So you can't say it to be triggered only on humans, for example, or vehicles. It's just whatever crosses that intrusion or line crossing zone will trigger that event on the actual system. And if, for example, a lot of systems generally rely on either continuous recording or motion event recording to try and save on storage usage. When using standard motion detection, you can get a lot of excessive recording on your event-based systems, but this is kind of resolved with the new Acusense 2.0 range, which has the new motion 2.0 as well, which we're also going to look at today. So what is Acusense? Or should I say Acusense 2.0, because it's a newer version of Acusense, so it's a lot more accurate in terms of the algorithm that's used and also the functionalities that you can actually get with the Acusense cameras themselves. So within the actual VCA events, you can set your target classification. So this is what you'd use to actually reduce the false alarms. So within the configuration of the detection, you can set it to be a human and or vehicle as the target, and then everything else, the actual camera's algorithms will try and filter out on the actual system itself. You can also have real-time alerts from the actual event being triggered through to your Connect mobile app, through to the IVMS 4200 software, through email, and on large systems you could also use the Hikvision VMS platform as well for those. On the NVRs themselves, on both the I-Series and K-Series NVR, you've got a quick target search option, and what this will allow you to do is search specifically for human or vehicle files that's been actually triggered by the Acusense cameras. That makes it a lot easier when you're looking for specific events. Instead of having to scroll through your recordings on the actual NVR, using your timelines, you can go into the quick search option on the NVR and search for human-only files between certain times. You can see every time the humans cross that line or enter that intrusion zone, and vice versa with vehicle files as well on the system. So it makes it a lot more easily useful for end users and customers alike as well. And what they've also brought in with the new Acusense 2.0 is target classification for motion detection. So your standard motion detection was always, if there's any motion detected on screen, it would trigger as you move between different pixels on the image. With the new Acusense 2.0 range, you can actually set it to filter out your false alarms. So you can set it to your target classification to be human and or vehicle when you're actually setting the system up, which I will show on the web front ends of an I-Series and K-Series that I've got set up in the room with me today as well. And the new algorithm is now up to 80% accurate with the false alarm reduction. The original Acusense only worked at around 70%, so the new one's working at around 80% accuracy as an average. And this is getting closer to the deep in mind technology on the MVR side of things, which will work at 90% accuracy, or up to 90% accuracy. There's also now up to 8 megapixel resolutions within the Acusense range as well. So you're getting that high quality image and high resolution with the addition of the Acusense alarm filtering with the target classification on the system as well for those. So this is just a comparison between the original first generation Acusense cameras and the newer second generation, which is the Acusense 2.0. So there's a few different improvements that they've made. So original Acusense used to work on frames within the actual trigger. So when the event was triggered, it would look at the frames of the actual image and see if a human is in that zone or vehicle. With the new algorithm, it's working based on the actual video footage. So it's actually looking as the person or vehicle's moving in the actual scene onto the trigger zone, and then it will actually alarm the system. The original version of the Acusense didn't support the motion detection, so it was just standard motion detection that was available. But now with the updated Acusense range, you now get the target classification on motion detection as well. The actual ranges, so the working distances of the algorithms has been improved. So on the newer cameras, you can go up to 20 meters on the 2.8mm lenses. It's up to 25 meters on the 4mm lens, and the 6mm lenses, it's 35 meters, and the 12mm lenses, it's your 50-meter detection distances, which is greatly improved over the original algorithms that we use for the detection. So there has been improvements made all around those. And you can see there as well that we've got the false alarm reduction, which is now up to 80%, which is a 10% improvement on the older algorithm that was used for the original Acusense. And this will also work with the 3 streams and the HD65 Plus, all available simultaneously. The resolution's gone from 4 megapixel now up to 8 megapixel resolutions. And we do have ranges for the built-in microphones as well. And there's now also the improvement with the SD card. So if you're using the camera standalone, or if you're using ANR recording, it will now support up to 256 gigabyte SD cards in the actual cameras themselves for the Acusense range. So the way the technology works is all done on the actual camera itself. So it has Hikvision's deep learning algorithms in the actual camera. And what you can do is you can either have the camera standalone, or now it's compatible on both the I series and K series for configuration. So when we go into the web front end of our units here, you'll see there's a couple of extra options now, similar to the Deep in Mind units. When you have an Acusense camera that you can actually configure on the MVR, so you can actually set your tag classification within the MVR. There isn't a need to log into the web front end to do the configuration or anything like that. And you can see there that primarily aimed at reducing false alarms from either the weather, animals, bushes, anything like that. The camera will try and filter those out from the technology. With the new Acusense 2.0, I mentioned that it now supports tag classification on motion detection. So what that allows you to do is to be able to select whether or not the target types are human and or vehicle. So if you're using the cameras internally, you could have them set to only trigger on humans within the property during specific time periods if you want, using the schedules as well. So this cuts down a lot on the false alarms, allows you to use motion detection more freely for your events coming through the Connect mobile app and that sort of thing as well. So you're not always having to use the line crossing or intrusion detection as you needed to on the original Acusense range as well. And these are just some of the camera models that are available for the Acusense range. I'm going to take a look a bit later on some of the Acusenses which are included with ColorVu. So there are ColorVu and Acusense cameras that are coming out as well that are available from us from there. So what we'll do is we'll move on to the Acusense demo. So I can log into the web front end of one of the MVRs that I've got set up in here. So this is a K series MVR that I've got set up in the boardroom. So this has got one of the standard Acusense 2.0 cameras added to it. So if we go into the configuration section, you can see on our motion detection, it's one of the 2.0, so it's got your options for your detection targets, whether or not it's human and or vehicle. that we can set up. I know we have had a few calls on this because it works slightly differently in terms of actually setting up the motion detection. So instead of drawing a grid over the camera image, it works a little bit more like the intrusion detection. So if we click on to draw area here, we actually draw a box or area that we want to enable with the actual motion detection. And then we can set the detection target to be human and our vehicle. Obviously, because we're internally, it would only be human that we'd want to trigger on this or could trigger this. So we can save that there. What we can also do is go into our linkage methods and we get our usual linkage actions that we would off standard motion detection. So we can have it trigger an audible warning on the recorder itself. We can have an email being sent, the notify surveillance center option for linking through to the applications, such as the HiConnect, IVMS, HikCentral, and you can also trigger the alarm outputs as well on the cameras once the actual event's triggered. So what we can do now is we can go into our smart event. So this is where we'd configure our intrusion detection, line crossing, any of our more smart events as such within the system. So if we set up an intrusion detection, we'd select enable at the top there, and we've got our first region that we want to set up. So if we click on draw area here, and then I just want to click the different points to set up my intrusion zone. And then again, similar to how we had it on the motion detection, we've also got the options to select our detection target to be human and or vehicle. With intrusion detection, we also have the ability to set a threshold. So this is the time in seconds that that person or a vehicle has to be in the intrusion zone before it will actually trigger an event to the system. So if we want to, we can set this as 2 seconds. So someone just walking past wouldn't trigger, but if they're stopped in that area, then it would actually trigger the event on the system through there. And our linkage actions are still the same as they are on the motion detection, so we can have that going through the app, we can have it going through to send emails, monitoring stations, for example, or we can have the full screen monitoring trigger on the actual recorder itself using the local output. We go into line crossing and then enable line crossing at the top. So similar, we've got our line when we click on to draw the area, and we can change this, we can make it longer on the actual area. So the way we have it set up currently is directional. So if you cross from B to A or A to B, the actual event will trigger, but you can set this to only trigger on specific directions. So if someone moves from A over to B, it will trigger the event, or you can set it to B going to A, or either way, depending on what your scenario is. If you have an entrance that's only an entrance and you want to know when someone walks out it's an exit, or if someone crosses your property threshold for your customers, would have that configured through there to send an alarm through the HikConnect app on their mobiles. So it depends on the scenario or the site that you're looking at as to which way this would need to be configured for the system, but it gives you that flexibility to have it work in the way that you need it to for those. So that's just a quick look at the standard Acusense cameras. What we'll do is we'll start going through the ColorVu side of things. I also have one of the ColorVu and Acusense cameras, which I'll be able to show you in a moment as well. If we go back over the slides. A lot of people will be familiar with the dark-fighter technology. So this was brought out a couple of years now, give you better nighttime performance and allows you to keep the camera in color mode a lot longer than you could with a standard camera. So that's on the middle image there, that's a dark-fighter image. And then the one on the right-hand side is a ColorVu image. This is without the white light LEDs turned on the actual camera itself. So this is just using the ambient lighting in the area to give you that image. That's using no additional lighting. And on the far left-hand side is a conventional camera in the same scenario without any IRs enabled on the camera. You can see there differences when you're using the ColorVu cameras, which makes it a great camera, especially if you're wanting to keep the stay in color 24/7. In some scenarios where there isn't enough ambient light in the area for the ColorVu camera, there is the white light LEDs, which can be configured to turn on depending on the different sensitivities that you set to give you that boost of light in the area. So you can stay in color 24/7. There's no more of the grainy nighttime images using IRs or anything like that. You get the full color all the time. which we've seen become quite popular recently. What they've also launched recently from Hikvision is the newer 8 megapixel or 4K ColorVu cameras. So you can see this image was taken in the same location. On the left-hand side is the 4K ColorVu camera, and on the right-hand side is the standard 2 megapixel. And when you digitally zoom, you can see the difference between the two images there. 4K being a lot sharper on the image and a lot more easy to see the definition, whereas the 2 megapixel ColorVu, you haven't got that clarity there. It's not as sharp in the actual image itself when you digitally zoom there for those, because the 8 megapixel is something that we have been asked for quite a lot on the ColorVu range, which is now available. So how does the actual ColorVu cameras work? So they work with a large f1.0 aperture. This allows the actual image sensor to collect more light that's in the actual area itself. There's also a more advanced image sensor, which improves utilization of the available light. So standard cameras have different aperture and different image sensors, whereas ColorVu cameras are designed to be able to work in really low light environments and take in as much light as they possibly can from the area to give you the image that you need within the scenario. The IR LEDs in the actual cameras, they're replaced with visible warm light LEDs in the actual camera. So there's no IR at all on the cameras, they are full white light cameras. And the actual image sensor itself is designed for extremely low light environments for the actual cameras themselves. And with this all in conjunction, this ensures that you can keep the ColorVu camera in color 24/7, even if there isn't any ambient light in the area or it isn't enough ambient light in the area. You can use the white light LEDs of the actual camera to give you that light source to keep the images in color all the time for your customers. With standard IR, normally to configure the IR settings, you do that through the image settings in the web front end of the camera. With the ColorVu cameras, the actual options moved. So to change any of the white light settings for the ColorVu cameras, it's in configuration, system, then system settings, and then into the external device tab. I know that this is something that threw me when I was first looking at them. So I just wanted to mention it in this webinar, just because it's something that we do get asked quite a bit on, but this just makes it a lot easier for installers to find by having it shown here. So this allows you to change the actual LED brightness of the white light LED. So if they're too bright and you want to dim those down, you can configure that through this page. You can either have them to be auto adjust, where the camera would automatically adjust the brightness levels of the LEDs, or you can manually set your brightness depending on the scenario. With the LED on, you can have that set to auto, so it will work similar to how the day-night switch works on the standard cameras with IRs. And you can increase the actual sensitivity. So if there is quite a lot of light in the area, or quite a lot of ambient light, should I say, can increase that sensitivity so it won't use that white light LED until it needs to for the camera image. Or in some scenarios, you might want to have it set on a specific time for the LED light to come on. Because they can be quite bright, the LED, so a lot of people use these to light up the areas on the front of the properties or anything like that as well when these have been installed. So it can be kind of used for both, depending on the scenario or what the end client wants to achieve with the actual system. What we've also got now is on the POC range, so the turbo range of recorders, there's now POC and ColorVu camera that's available. So you've got all of your ColorVu technology, your white light LED, and your super low light performance with the camera, but now it can actually be powered by POC instead of having to use a separate cable for your video and a separate cable for the power. Now it's all over the coax using the POC technology. So this will work at up to 200 meters on a single run of coax between the actual POC DVR and the ColorVu POC camera. So you've only got one cable going to the camera, and it gives you the benefits of POC in terms of saving time installing, as well as actually giving you the benefits of the ColorVu performance for your nighttime images within the system as well, which I know this is something that's been asked quite a lot for since it was originally released for IP originally, and also on TVI on the turbo range. A lot of customers have been asking for this to be included on POC as well for the system, but that's now available as well for those. So this is just a quick comparison between the ColorVu images and conventional nighttime image using standard IR. So you can see on the left there, we've got the usual grayscale image, And on the right, we've got a full colour image from ColorVu camera set up in the same scenario. And then we've also got on the bottom two images what you'd usually see outside of a person's house. The cameras are mounted on a property. The left-hand side is a standard camera using IR, and on the right-hand side is a ColorVu camera. So you're getting that full colour image. So for example, if there was a theft or anything, you couldn't see the person's face. You can see what clothes they're wearing, what colour they are, so you can give that information on to the police or anything, which would make it a lot easier to track down that person if needed to. With this, we've got the left-hand side camera. So this is a standard camera. Top left image is with the actual IR LEDs turned off, and the bottom image is with the IR LEDs on. The right-hand image is our ColorVu camera. So you can see there's no white light LEDs in use here. It is just the actual image sensor that's actually giving us this image from there. So you can see the massive difference between a standard camera and the ColorVu camera. And then in the bottom right is the same again, with a little bit more ambient light in the image. So the left hand side is with IR, and the right hand side is with the standard ColorVu camera without use of the actual white light LEDs, because there's enough ambient light in the actual area for the camera to give you an image from that. So what we've also got now is we had two separate ranges. So we had the Acusense IP cameras, and we also had the ColorVu IP cameras. What Hikvision has done now is launched a range that incorporates both technologies in one camera. So you get the benefits of your 24/7 color images with the ability for your target classification with your Acusense technology, with the algorithms in the actual camera. So this is the comparison between a standard camera with the Acusense and also ColorVu camera with the Acusense. So you can see the difference in the image that you can actually see there. There isn't the IR glare back from the windows. It's giving you a much clearer image with the actual Acusense technology than it would achieve with IR in the same kind of scenario. And again, the difference with vehicles as well. And so with standard cameras, you do get the IR reflection on your license plates, unless you just use exposure settings on the camera, which can darken the overall image in order to be able to see a license plate. With ColorVu cameras, you're not getting that same kind of glare back, so it makes it a bit easier to actually read the license plates with those. And also with the Acusense technology, getting your alerts come through, but they're in full color instead of your grayscale images with your standard IR performance from the actual cameras. So this makes it a lot more usable within the scenario, makes it a lot more powerful, and when you're actually receiving those events through, you can actually see exactly as you would in the day, near enough, rather than you would with the standard IR. So the images are a lot more usable. You can see what colour a vehicle is, what colour clothes someone's wearing. It makes it a lot easier to try and identify someone or an object within the footage on nighttime image from the ColorVu and Acusense cameras from there. So these are the different that are available that will have both the ColorVu and Acusense technology from Hikvision that will be listed on our website as well. And I know our BDM teams will follow up after this webinar with our customers on price and different kind of ranges that we'll be stocking at Dynamic as well. That's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover today. I just wanted to make note of the technical support that we offer here at Dynamic CCTV for any items that are purchased from ourselves directly. We do have 10 technical support team members that will take your calls or emails at technical@dynamic-cctv.com. We're also up on social media, so we've got on our LinkedIn accounts, do post quite regularly, and on our YouTube channels. All of these are clickable links, and I'll send out the slides at the end of this webinar, and you'll be able to click through those links and be able to get access to our pages on there. Thank you for joining me. I'll go on to the Q&A section now. If any of you don't want to stick around for the Q&A section, when you leave the webinar, you'll be redirected to a feedback page. I'd be grateful for any feedback that you have on the webinar, and that will help us to improve these webinars in the future, or any additional webinars that you'd like to see us do further down the line as well. So I'll start making my way through the questions now. Pete has asked, is there a difference in performance between TVI and network Acusense cameras? The TVI DVR range of Acusense technology is actually on the DVR itself. There is a limitation on the amount of channels that you can use. When you're using the IP camera Acusense range, because it's all done on the camera itself, you're only limited by the amount of IP channels that you can add to an MVR, and you're not actually limited by the actual device itself. Whereas with the TVI Acusense, on some of the units you can only have 4 channels enabled with the Acusense alarm filtering on the actual unit itself. Peter's also asked, please can you explain the filtering time again on ColorVu and IR? Does this affect reading of number plates on vehicles? The filtering time doesn't affect the actual being able to see license plates on nighttime image. For standard IR cameras, that would be the exposure settings. What the filtering time is the time it takes before it switches from day mode to night mode on either the ColorVu cameras or the standard IR cameras. So if, for example, someone turned a light on or there was a light nearby and you didn't want it to change straight to day mode and that light was treated, you can increase your filtering time of how bright the image needs to be before it'll actually switch back to day mode, or vice versa on the actual camera. Peter's also asked, are there any dates for the 8 megapixel 4K ColorVu, TVI or IP cameras? So it is in the IP range that they're going to be available. There is some dates of when our stock comes in, which our BDMs will be in touch shortly after this webinar with those dates for you as well. We do have all of your contact details there, so we will be in touch with the dates that those go live. Paul has asked, will the new Acusense/ColorVu cameras have to be installed with an I series or will they work with a K series? So the Acusense cameras are compatible with both the I series MVRs and the K series MVRs. On the initial demo, I did that on the K series MVR. So it does give you those tag classification options if you're using the Acusense cameras, and ColorVu cameras will work as well on there for those. Dan has asked, can the white light LEDs be triggered by an event as opposed to schedules? Also, I noticed a section on regional entrance and exit once the application of these displays. For the white light LEDs on the TVI units, there is an option to have those triggered by the event. There is also on the Acusense and ColorVu range, there will be an option to have a white light triggered when an event's triggered by the actual camera itself on some of those units. I think that's it. Any questions that I haven't been able to answer live on the webinar, I will send emails out covering those questions off as well. I've got all of your contact details there. When the webinar ends, I will send out a copy of all the slides that I've used today, as well as some additional flyers and brochures covering the Acusense and the ColorVu ranges. Your local BDMs from Dynamic CCTV will be in touch in terms of availabilities of the different cameras, and also for any pricing or anything else that you'd need help with. If you do have any more questions or that you'd like me to take a look at, my contact details are on screen. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar, which will be on the Optex range, on a webinar that I'll be co-hosting with Optex. So I hope you can join me for that one, but take care and I'll see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much. Cheers.